Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple of Americans. This week, Arsenal traveled to Anfield to face reigning league champions Liverpool. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove. Today's one of those days it's good that we don't record immediately after the game. It's good to have a little time to digest and work some of the language out of my system.
Yeah, definitely one of those.
We have plenty to say. There's a lot. This was a busy week. We were telling you before the show it was a busy week at work. It was also a busy week for Arsenal, and I'm just cataloging all the stuff we have to talk about. I'm like, wow, a lot happened before this game, and a lot more even happened this evening. So at post game, which we'll throw in as well.
All right. Sounds good. By way of follow-up from last week, we had talked about the record that Max Dowman set, although it was kind of a second place record, but then also the records we discussed that he could have set had he scored or things like that. What I didn't realize at the time was that's not those. I mean, they would be Arsenal records, but they would also be like top division records.
Oh, yeah.
Like Ethan Nwaneri was the youngest Premier League player, the youngest top division player ever to start. Or not start, but play and then start. That was news to me. Like I was seeing it rehashed elsewhere, and I was like, oh, whoa, really? Yeah. There was an article actually talking about that. There was some interesting coverage on The Athletic of that situation, like interviewing some players who were more senior players who were playing against some of these kids who had come up. This is like 20 years ago with someone who had set a record back then or something, just reflecting on what it's like playing against them. So, yeah.
I mean, and we always talk about how strange it is, to be 15 and doing that. On some level, it's a little weird, too, to be the opposition. Because the saying was, and I've seen it attributed to Arsene Wenger, and I'm sure you've heard it in other contexts, if you're good enough, you're old enough. But there has got to be something weird to think you're 24, fully fledged professional, you played for a couple of years, and here's some kid 10 years younger than you. Like, that's weird. Like, what do you do with that? On some level, you have to treat them the same way, but it feels weird to kind of muscle out a 15-year-old. It's got to feel weird to do that. It's got to be an interesting one. Yeah, definitely.
And, you can say, and I believe this player who was interviewed did say that, you don't hold back, you play your game. In your mind, that's what you should do. I do wonder if part of you holds back a little bit, like, not wanting to hurt him or something. I don't know.
I mean, I suspect your professionalism kicks in. They talk about this sort of being the big difference, at least in American sports, like American football, from college to the professional. In college, they go to class. It's still kind of a bit of an. I mean, it's very professionalized, but it's still kind of an extracurricular. And you're a star player going up against a guy who is going to be selling insurance in 6 months. Like you're not. That's your opposition. You show up in the NFL and your first practice is against your new teammate who's 28, has 2 kids and a mortgage. Like, no, I'm not screwing around with you anymore, kid. This is not. So I suspect that at the speed the game moves, I think once you're in the moment, you just kind of react to things that are happening. Like you're not thinking. It's almost like your training kicks in. You almost can't hold back that way. It's one of those, maybe it looks different, later afterwards as you watch the tape of what's going on. I wonder. But that's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, definitely. This week, the Carabao Cup draw happened. What were the outcomes, or what was the specific outcome for Arsenal that we care about?
All right. So actually, there's 2 bits of news at the Carabao Cup. First, for the Arsenal side. So this is the 3rd round draw. So remember, the League Cup, they're now under the name Carabao. Apparently, we've looked at the list of names. I think a favorite one was, this is the old Milk Cup or Carling, Capital One. Apparently it was called Rumbelows at one point. I don't know what Rumbelows is, but the Rumbelows Cup sounds kind of fun. Anyway, because Arsenal was playing in Europe, all the Premier League teams in Europe get buys into the 3rd round. All the rest of the Premier League teams who are not in Europe played in the 2nd round. One of those included our old friends from Old Trafford, Manchester United, who were dunked out of the competition by Grimsby Town in the final game of the 2nd round.
Really?
Lost on penalties.
Oh man!
With their massive forward signing, Benjamin Sesko apparently was lined up to shoot like 10th in the shootout.
Wow.
Which is weird, because he's a goal scoring forward. That's why you have him on your roster. So that's all very curious. United was able to win this weekend to sort of staunch their bleeding, but they've had a rough start to the calendar year. My favorite comment in all of the aftermath of all that was it was the Grimsby town keeper, and this could have been a joke floating around, but I thought, it's one of those. Even if it's not true, I hope it is. Where they asked him about it, and he said, "Actually, I'm also a United fan, so I'm also kind of mad." It's just,
yeah,
they're a mess. Wow.
So remind me, Grimsby, what level of the pyramid are they in? What league they play in?
They're at least League One.
Wow.
I think maybe League Two. I don't believe they're Championship. Actually, now you've said this, now I really want to look that up real quick.
That's nuts. I mean, in your time watching English football, how often do you see the big top division sides eliminated, especially this early, by the lower down teams?
So they're in League Two.
Oh boy.
It's not often, although usually what you see is. We've talked about this, especially in the early rounds of the Carabao Cup. The big clubs will roll out youth sides or younger players. Apparently, United played a lot more of their regular starters, which makes the whole thing, frankly, even more embarrassing.
Right.
It's interesting. It's one of those things that actually, on some level, used to be a little more common. Maybe not quite Manchester United, but Manchester United is a far cry from Manchester United, as we know. It was a little bit, it's weird. It probably was a little bit more unusual, but also some ways more common because teams just didn't take those competitions as seriously and they weren't as deep. The FA Cup was famous for this. The magic of the cup is the big clubs being knocked out in one-off games.
Yeah.
It used to be when you look up at late in the rounds of the Carabao Cup, especially, and sometimes in the FA Cup, you see a bunch of teams in maybe some lower divisions or kind of middle of the pack of the Premier League, and winning the FA Cup was kind of a way to save your season. So like Crystal Palace last year, that sort of thing used to happen a little more often. The big clubs have financially distanced themselves. They've built a lot of depth. So the League Cup especially has been a lot of City, Liverpool, Chelsea the last few years. And Newcastle last year, which is certainly not a poor club. At the end of the day, these are the sorts of things that happen. Arsenal's been knocked out of competitions by teams in leagues below them in recent years. We lost out in the FA Cup to Forest a couple of years ago when they were in the Championship. So these sorts of things happen, and so you just kind of, you just get to point and laugh at the big club it happens to, which in this case is United. So enjoy that. Enjoy these moments.
And I guess part of it too is like that they went down on penalties. I mean, that kind of, penalties are a little unpredictable. We've talked before about how maybe they may or may not be the best tiebreaker mechanism that they are. They tend toward randomness a little bit.
Yeah, but you went to penalties with Grimsby
true.
Town. That's
true.
The problem is that you are in penalties in the first place. You're right. The shootout itself is a bit of a coin flip, less than you think, but it's still a bit of a coin flip. The fact that you're in the moment is really the issue here.
Well, right, and that does kind of portend the discussion for today's match against Liverpool. Also, it's not that they scored a miraculous goal; it's that we didn't score any.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll get there. By the way, so anyway, the Arsenal side of this, we had the third round draw. We were drawn away to Port Vale.
I've never heard of them, so I think that's probably a good thing.
Apparently, we last played Port Vale. I think it was in 1998 in the FA Cup, en route to an FA Cup that Arsenal won. We should point out.
Okay.
Apparently, this was back in the days of lots of replay. Well, only one replay, but apparently Arsenal drew one, and then one. I think drew the second one, and then won in penalties. I think I saw. Anyway, that was 1998, so closing in on 30 years ago.
Right.
Port Vale is currently in League One. So the third level, and apparently we're just promoted from League Two. So, congratulations to I think it's pronounced the Valens. I think that's how. Again, I'm reading the Wikipedia entry,
right?
So I don't.
Your guess is as good as mine. They're probably better. Yeah, that would make sense.
But anyway, yes, they are. They will go away to Port Vale, and that game still hasn't officially been scheduled yet. It is, as the saying goes, the week commencing of September 22nd. So third week of September. So we still have a couple of weeks. Right. And that game, by the way, they're at Vale Park in the town of Stoke-on-Trent in Staffordshire, England. So
that doesn't mean anything to me, but
in the middle of the country, the West Midlands.
It sounds lovely.
It's Stoke, so not really.
Industrial.
It's Stoke, but no, I'm thinking of Stoke City, a former Premier League bit noir of ours. But anyway, speaking of teams, I'm definitely not sorry to see go. But anyway, so we'll be away to Port Vale on the week of September 22nd. The third round of the League Cup, again, then there's potentially the third round, fourth round, fifth round, quarterfinals, and then a two-legged semifinals after the new year, and then the final for the League Cup is March 22nd. A little later than I thought. Usually,
it's spaced out a bunch. I mean, I remember the semifinal where we got eliminated last year was in February. So
yes, it was the two legs. It was January, February, because it was two legs to Newcastle.
Okay.
So we got
the second leg was February, right?
I have to say, so interesting side on this. I would actually kind of like to win the Carabao Cup. I mean, obviously, beyond the part of I would like Arsenal to win everything all the time, but
let's say anything maybe at this point. But yeah.
Why you gotta be like that? Why does it have to be like that?
I want to see it. You've seen them win something, right?
Anyway, yes, a handful of FA Cups. But it's interesting. We talked about the way clubs think of the League Cup. One of the things you're also seeing is a lot of clubs who are sort of entering. If we think of a club being in cycles, right? This period where you build, the period where you win things, and then sort of the decline, right? So it's the development cycle of a generation of players, so to speak. The League Cup has actually been a really nice marker for a lot of them, as sort of on their way up. And if you look back at some of the winners, Chelsea, Liverpool, City had done it. It's sort of a first trophy and kind of becomes a proof of concept for what they're doing, and for the players an opportunity to have the trophy, to have finished a competition and walked away with the silverware. Like so there's a proof of concept element to it that I think would be nice for us, because it is. I mean, we've said nice things about the Community Shield and all that, but look, the League Cup is definitely a step up, like a big step up from the Community Shield in terms of the quality. So I would like to win it, because I think it would be good for us. Because you look at when it is, right? It comes in February, March, and so there you can win something before you get into as you're getting into the business and the knockout stages of the FA Cup or the Champions League, the late stages of the Premier League, assuming you're still in the race for some of those things. So.
Yeah. It's a starter cup. It kind of gets the ball rolling in that direction.
In some ways, it really can be. In a way that it feels like the FA Cup kind of doesn't seem to be the same way. It's interesting the way things have changed and how people rate these competitions.
Yeah. All right. Well, this week we were expecting the Champions League draw also, right?
Yes, we got that. Speaking of rating competitions, the big one in Europe. So, as a reminder, the Champions League phase consists of 36 teams. They were divided into 8 pots of 9 teams each. You were drawn with 2 teams from each pot, 1 home, 1 away. The schedule and the opponents and then the opponents and then the home away slots were not randomized, but developed by an algorithm to avoid mixing dates, to avoid. So the rules were you couldn't draw anyone from your own federation, so we could not draw any of the other English teams, which there were 5 of them. There are 6 English teams in the tournament this year. That's Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City, Chelsea, Tottenham Hotspur, and Newcastle, along with us. So we couldn't draw any of those. And so the draw was had on Thursday. They gave you your list of opponents home and away. They spent a couple days on the schedule. And yesterday they released the schedule. And so here's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Match day 1, we are away to Athletic Bilbao. A Basque side, actually rather famously, only has Basque players. I think they've loosened that slightly in recent years, but for the most part are famous for their Basque-only policy. So we played them, by the way, in our final game of preseason, which we won 3-0, which was a nice little starter getting into the tournament. By the way, back a note on those pots. You are put into your pots due to your UEFA coefficient number.
Right. We've talked about that a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, based on your performance of the last 5 years. Our UEFA coefficient number is 98, which is good for 10th best in the competition. So we were the top-rated team in pot 2, which in terms of the rating doesn't really matter. It's just we were in pot 2.
And no team in that pot is better than us according to that one metric.
According to that metric, yeah. Now, granted, it doesn't matter. We were drawing 2 of those teams as well, so it didn't really matter. But just, if you're saying to yourself, wait a minute, why are we in pot 1? Remember that still within that 5-year cycle is the year we weren't in Europe at all. So that's still killing us. Next year, assuming we don't crash out in the league phase, unlikely, but just in case. Assuming that doesn't happen, I expect our coefficient will take a nice jump this year, and I'll be very curious to see what we look like, presuming we're in the Champions League again next season.
Right, and assuming they keep the same format. I don't know if they've said whether they intend to or not.
I think they're locked into this one for a couple years at least, but then again, you never know. Things change. Anyway, yes, so Athletic Bilbao, by the way, was in pot 4. Our next game is a pot 3 opponent, home against Olympiacos of Greece. We've seen them a lot in the Champions League. Actually, they are one of our 2 most common opponents in the Champions League.
Now, I don't think I've seen them yet, though. Right over the last few years, I don't think we have played them in Europa or Champions League.
I don't think so. Greek side, typically in the Champions League, one of the 2 or 3 Greek teams that always wins the league, so usually in the Champions League. We've seen them a lot. Their owner is, oh my gosh, I can't think of the guy's name. He owns Nottingham Forest, so he's the one who, Marinakis, billionaire. He's the one who poached Edu from us for his multi-club system. He's also the one, by the way, who gave Mikel Arteta COVID.
Okay.
Well, so we played them right shortly before COVID. We played away to Olympiacos for the second leg of the knockout stages. We lost. That was disappointing. And pre-game, apparently Marinakis is a very gregarious character. Was down in the tunnel, shaking hands and sort of bro hugging at both teams, including Arsenal. And it was discovered after the game that he had tested positive for COVID. Right. And so a few days after that, Arteta tested positive for COVID, which is actually what led to the league shutting down.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I don't know what to make of all of that, but anyway, it's a fun European story. Greece. Anyway, match day 3, we are going to be home to Atletico Madrid. Who's in pot 2 with us. This is going to be a fascinating game. There are a lot of similarities in the way we play with Diego Simeone's Atletico. They are a good team, always a bit of bite. There's a danger to playing them. They're a solid team. It's a good game. Good to get it home, though, so that'll be a nice one to play here.
Yeah. If I'm remembering right, I think, did we play them last season? I know we played Real. Did we play Atletico?
No, Atletico and Real met in the knockout stage. They were bracketed to play us, so we got the winner of that one. And of course, Real beat them in the Champions League because at the end of the day, Real always beats Atletico in the Champions League.
Right.
Like it's something like in the last decade, they've beaten them. They've knocked them out at like every single round of the knockout stage. It's including in the final. It's really. Given the fact they're arch rivals in the same city is you feel for Atleti.
Right.
But anyway, match day 4, we are away to Slavia Prague, which is a team we haven't seen for a while. They're a pot 3 team. Match day 5, here's our big one. Home game, pot 1, home against another of our most common Champions League opponents, Bayern Munich.
Yeah, I still remember a couple years ago when they eliminated us in the quarterfinal.
Yeah, so it'll be nice to see them. That'll be in late November. We didn't give all the dates. All the dates have been lined up. I didn't write them all down here, but late November we'll see them in the Emirates, or in Arsenal Stadium, because it's Europe, you can't say
right. And also a longtime rival Harry Kane is still with them, right?
Yes. Oh, yes, Harry Kane. Boyhood Arsenal fan, just saying.
Right.
Let's see. Then match day 7. Remember, this goes into the new year, so match day 7 in early January. We will be our final away game. Yes, our final away game, match day 7, away to Club Bruges, who's in the. No, I'm sorry. That's the last one of the calendar. I'm sorry. That's in December at Club Bruges, a Belgian side. They're in pot 2. I don't really know much about them, so that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Then in January, now we switch the calendar. In January, we are away to Inter Milan. That's our pot 1 road game. You may remember us from playing Inter Milan away last year.
Right.
The only loss we took in the Champions League before Paris, before playing PSG, it was it was a little bit of a dodgy affair. They got a continental penalty. I'm not saying it was wrong. I'm just saying, again, you would see that called in Europe, not in England. But they converted the penalty. We were denied something. I believe we were denied a penalty on the other end, and lost. So a good team, the runners up a year ago, they got absolutely pistol whipped in the final by PSG. Ooh, that was ugly. I watched that one. That was not pretty. It was like 5-0. It was 5-0. It could have been worse. It was not good. They're an interesting one. Dangerous, of course, away at the San Siro. The experience of having gone there will probably be good for us this year. And then finally, our final Champions League game, end of January, at least in the league phase, home against, I think this is how you pronounce it, Kairat. Kairat is making their debut with the group or league phase of the Champions League. They are from Kazakhstan, advanced by beating Celtic in the final playoff round.
Oh, so, I heard that Celtic didn't make it in, and that I didn't know that they were eliminated by them. Because I felt bad for Kieran Tierney, who I guess won't be in the Champions League this season.
We're going to have to avenge our boy Kieran on this one. Kairat making their debut. So let's just say, it's interesting. We didn't really get into this because we didn't know all the teams that were in the pots before we recorded last. They are pot 4. They are the lowest rated team in the Champions League. Our coefficient rating, by the way, remember ours is 98. Theirs is 5.5. Again, because they don't have a lot of experience in Europe, or they haven't done a lot overall. I mean, we should put also point out Newcastle, who we know is a very good team, is also in pot 4. Theirs is 23.039. If you just ranked the teams based on their pots and their coefficients, they would be 34th out of 36th. I do not think Newcastle will finish at 34th. I'm gonna put a marker on that one. But yeah, so it's interesting. You look at the pots. In some ways, it's very different because under the group stage, you were drawing the 3 teams you were competing against, and so there was a fear, looking at, okay, do we want this one? Do we want this one? Home and away. With this one, honestly, pot 1, 2, 3, I don't care. It was going to be whoever it was going to be fine. The real potential danger lay in pot 4, not so much for the opponents, especially for us, given the only one I really wouldn't want to see is Newcastle, and we couldn't play them. But in a lot of ways, because of the possibility of where we'd play some of them. If you look at some of the pot 4 teams included, Kairat in Kazakhstan, which I'll come back to them in a moment. Paphos, who's in Cyprus, out there in the Eastern Mediterranean. Karabag, who's in Azerbaijan, where we played the 2019 Europa League, the Europa League final, which I'm not going to say any more about. Galatasaray, big Turkish club in Istanbul. I think they're in Istanbul, or maybe. Anyway, they're in Turkey. The point is, you're talking about teams that are all really far away. If you think about, continental Europe is roughly similar in size to the continental United States, right? Sure. So to think about London is probably about, I don't know. If we think of like Portugal is the West Coast, London's probably, I don't know, maybe like Montana or the Dakotas or something, and you're flying to to go to Paphos, you're flying to Miami. Like it's a long way to go, especially to hop back on the plane afterwards and head back and play a Premier League. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The nightmare scenario was Kairat, the Kazakhs. Longitudinally, Kairat is east of Mumbai, India.
Oh my goodness.
It is geographically closer to Tokyo than it is to London.
Wow.
It is. It is. When I looked up, I saw an 8.5 hour flight from London to Almaty, which is the largest city in Kazakhstan, which is where it's located. That's a long way.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So we did not draw the short straw on that one, thankfully.
Yeah.
Among the clubs that did was Real Madrid. So that'll be fun for everyone. So thankfully, when I saw we drew Kairat, I was like, "Oh no!" And then I saw it was home. Okay.
Right.
Again, these are all quality teams. There's capability in all of them. If you're not careful, they could Grimsby you. But at the same time, I don't want to go to Kairat. I didn't want to go to Paphos or Karabakh. I didn't want to go one of those long distance trips, and we don't have to do that. Thankfully, our farthest trip is Prague.
Right.
Which is not really that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. That's good to know. Is there any material advantage to being in Pot 1, or is it just kind of more like bragging rights, like we're a Pot 1 team now? Like, is there any practical advantage?
It was an advantage under the group stage because you were only going to be you couldn't draw any. You were every group had a 1, 2, 3, and 4 team, so you weren't going to be mixing with those, or you were,
right.
Yeah, so as a Pot 2 team, 1 and 2, we're going to play 2 teams from each pot anyway. So it's really more about organizing and sort of the idea of slotting the quality of your competition. Now, again, the pots, because they use the UEFA coefficient, the pots aren't always really an accurate reflection of the true quality of the team. So there are a lot of so basically everyone's looking at pot 4 going, okay, not Newcastle. It's not Newcastle. And again, we were all talking about top level competition. Everyone's excited. Kairat, they showed a video of them watching the draw. There was a pretty big cheer when they saw they were going to Arsenal, which, hey, trip to London. I mean, yeah, sounds, they're going to get to play at Arsenal. That's pretty cool. We'll see how that all goes. But yeah, it's going to be, it'll be interesting. We'll talk more about those matchups more as we get closer to them. I haven't fully digested where they fit in the league schedule yet to be able to sort of say, I've seen some sentiments. I haven't heard a lot of this conversation when I look at stuff online. So my suspicion is it's nothing particularly tricky, but who knows what it'll look like when we get closer to them. Those games.
You reminded me of another interesting athletic article from this week. I've become the kind of person who reads articles about soccer in the Athletic now. They had an article talking about how foreigners to England place a high premium on being on one of a London clubs. Mm-hmm. Whereas from within England, they don't really care. If you're in the Premiership, that's what matters. But from outside England, they all want to be in the London club. So it makes it easier for those teams to attract the best players from outside England.
I mean, I have a couple thoughts. One, I saw the headline of that article was something. It was that the headline question, right? Why do so many young players want to move to London?
Yeah.
Think about it. Just like, I mean, you have to think, and I imagine they talk a lot about it's a massive diverse city, which, Liverpool has diverse areas, Manchester does. Like, this isn't, but at the same time, like, they're not London. Like, London is substantially larger than everything else.
It's the big metro area where, like, if you're a young person, the nightlife and stuff to do, like, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Whereas, they were saying older players, but still, like, largely talking about English players, not the foreigners, that they are perfectly happy to live in outside Manchester or whatever and have a nice home and like a more suburban lifestyle. But,
and I suspect there's probably a slightly similar version of that plays out with, some of the other continental foreigners going to some of the continental clubs. Like but also look at, the cities with the clubs. I mean, who wouldn't want to live in Madrid, Barcelona, Milan, Paris, Munich? Sure. Like, these are some of the world's well-known cities, and they're great places. They're large, they're cosmopolitan, and you think you're coming in as a foreigner to know that you have a little home country, right? The little Italy or the little Ecuador, your home country is there. It's more likely to exist in a city like London than it is in, I don't know, Leeds. I'm not going to pick on Leeds, but you know what I mean.
Sure. Like those types of clubs that are from more rural areas, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Or even just much smaller metropolitan areas.
Yep. All right, so there's been some additional transfer news with Arsenal leading into this week's match, right?
Yes, well, sort of. So, as we record this on the evening of August 31st, the last day of August, tomorrow, September 1st, is the closing of the transfer window. The window slams shut. It never gently closes. The window always slams shut. But as it does close tomorrow, you're going to see a lot of people crashing deadlines, as you'd expect. The only thing we know for certain, Karl Hein has been is on his way out to Werder Bremen in Germany. So good luck to him. And I'm going to check real quickly. I believe that is a purchase. No, I'm sorry, it's a loan. Officially, it's a loan to the end of the season. Okay. So he's been loaned out to Werder Bremen. After that, we have a whole bunch of rumors, which are things that are, potentially near. The one I've heard a lot, well, there's two I've heard a lot of this week. One is, I feel confident the one we feel like is about to happen is Jakub Kiwior going to Porto in Portugal. And I say confident because apparently he is in Portugal right now, so doing the physical. and yeah, it sounds like that's going to be, that one's going to happen. The rest are sort of rumors. It seems like there's a lot of conversation between Arsenal and Marseille in France about Alexander Zinchenko. And again, a player who is, all these players we're going to mention, by the way, are a bit of called surplus to requirements, right? We're just not going to really have space for them. It's better for them and their careers if they head somewhere else, I think. So, certainly no hard feelings about any of them leaving. Hope they all do well. But yeah, Zinchenko to Marseille. Some others that I have heard floating around, Albert Sambi-Lokonga going on loan to Hamburg. Again, hopefully that happens. There is also news about Fabio Vieira, either going to Hamburg or Stuttgart, also on loan, so into Germany. And then Reece Nelson, potentially a loan into Fulham with an option to buy. Which in some cases you hear that a little bit too, loans with options. Sometimes the option is mandatory, which a lot of that's done for accounting purposes. It looks bad for our budget if we do the purchase this year as opposed to next year. But yeah, technically he's on loan, and then we'll buy him permanently at the end of the year.
Sure.
All of this, by the way, first of all, we had to move some people out because, as you saw, Arsenal brought a lot of players in. Guess what? Not finished yet. Apparently, we have, especially the Kiwior deal was tied to this one in particular. Apparently he is in London awaiting a physical if he hasn't taken it already. Probably not taking it now because, it's, as I record this, it's like 2:00 in the morning in London. I've never actually heard it said, so I'm going to guess on the pronunciation. Piero Hincapié, who is which must be why Ecuador is on my mind. He's an Ecuadorian national from Bayer Leverkusen, a central defender. So he would be coming in. His arrival would be contingent partially on Kiwior being sold for both financial reasons, but also roster reasons. So he would essentially become the new Kiwior, and Kiwior would go off to Porto.
Okay.
So potentially, as I understand it, that's very likely to happen. As I said, he's in London. So Hincapié is probably the newest Arsenal player.
Cool. Usually at this point in the show, we might have a quick digression into MLS and Leagues Cup news, but that situation is developing as we speak. There's currently about 10 minutes of regulation time left in the Leagues Cup final. As we record this, Miami did make it there. They beat Orlando 3-1. So we will have that result and perhaps very briefly, not necessarily discuss, but at least announce it later on after we talk about the real matter at hand, which of course is the Liverpool match that happened earlier today. So this was our away match at Anfield. We lost 1-0 in somewhat tragic fashion. Goal in the 83rd minute by Liverpool. Really beautiful free kick. I mean, like the type that we were talking about Arsenal scoring a couple times we were lucky to have last year. But yeah, so
yes, Dominic Szoboszlai. We might as well lead with that. I mean, it was unstoppable.
Yeah,
it glanced off the inside of the post and went. I mean, that kick is just there. There's no keeper in the world who can make that save.
And Raya came as close as you reasonably could have.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's the kind of thing that happens sometimes in a very tight, closely played game. We talked about it. I mean, the obvious comparison is I think the Declan Rice free kicks against Madrid. And you talk about having the moment of magic. Now, of course, that was a game we won 3-0 because he actually did it twice, and we got another one. So clearly outplayed Real in that game, but we'll come back to that. But yeah, that was a defeat. Today was the defeat, first defeat of the season, first drop points of the season, first goal conceded on the season. I'll sort of put it to you. I threw this in a little bit at the end of the game, or at the end of last week's show, right? The pressure was likely on Liverpool because they almost needed to win, given it was their home game against the team we kind of expect to be their closest rivals for the title. And that was before, by the way, we saw Manchester City lose earlier today to Brighton. Which is funny. Manchester City losing. Brighton, of course, is going to be dangerous as always. But anyway, yeah. In a sense, Liverpool got the result they needed. And so I'll sort of start you. How do you feel in general about this as a result? Thinking big picture wise. We can talk about the game itself in a moment. But in terms of our big picture, how do you feel?
Well, I think I've got a few different thoughts on this. So the first thing is looking at Arteta's career. This is something that they were pointing out during the broadcast. We have not won at Anfield under Arteta. Mm-hmm. In the first half, we played well. I think we outplayed Liverpool in the first half. I think there were some moments that we kind of failed to capitalize on, but we're hoping that, maybe if we keep up in that same vein, that in the second half we might be able to score at some point. But as the second half dragged on, and they were playing better than us pretty much the entire second half from my point of view, it started to be like, well, can we at least pull out a 0-0 draw against them? So we dropped points, but they dropped the same number of points in the same match. And then they scored that goal, and we had a couple moments of danger, but I wasn't super hopeful of the way that we'd been playing. That at the late substitutions we made of bringing on Odegaard or Eze or even Max Dowman, that any of that was gonna rescue this game at that point. So disappointed but not devastated, I guess, is how I would characterize it for me. What about you?
Definitely frustrating. And our difficulties at Anfield even predate Arteta. I know they said he's never won there, but frankly, if we go back to Unai Emery and even the late stage Arsene Wenger, they were also struggling there. And of course, that coincided with Jurgen Klopp's arrival and sort of the rise of Liverpool into, sort of the club they are currently, the title contenders they are currently, the perpetual title contenders, I should say. Yeah, it was frustrating because I do think we outplayed them for a good portion of the match. I in some ways, I compare it a little bit to the United game, where if you look at it, Liverpool doesn't really generate a lot of chances. And we didn't either. And I'm hearing a lot or seeing a lot from like Arsenal people, and of course the general media, the sort of the overall general media. Sort of talking about Arsenal not being aggressive, not showing ambition. It was a slightly defensively focused lineup. I mean, you look at the midfield, it was Marino along with Zubimendi, and then, I blanked on the third midfielder, Declan Rice. So that's a midfield that can defend really well. And I think, in a lot of ways, this game played the way we want it to. We dictated the tempo. Like we've talked last year, right? Liverpool thrives on chaotic moments. That's kind of how they want to play, to generate those kind of opportunities. And you saw the goal they had called back was generated in those kinds of moments. Quick turnovers, quick transitions. Mm-hmm. And you saw that we limited a lot of those chances. And in particular, the player that terrifies you is Mo Salah out in the left. And I thought Calafiori and Martinelli overall did a really good job with him. Was it sacrificing a little bit on the offensive end? Perhaps. But I guess there are a lot of people out there who want to see Arsenal suddenly turn into prime Manchester City or prime Barcelona and, go forward or and sort of play Liverpool's game. And no, we shouldn't do that. It's not the team. It's not who we are. And I thought in a lot of ways we dictated the tempo. Now, does that leave us open to these kinds of moments? Yeah. We are heavily reliant on set pieces, and our set pieces didn't generate the same kind of danger we've seen in our first two games. Now, of course, Liverpool is also a lot better than United or Leeds are. So that's kind of there. I go back to, again, I think in the context of the title race, they needed this kind of result more than we did. And it's frustrating. And of course it was also frustrating to walk into the game without Saka or Odegaard, which was, disappointing. We'll talk about Saliba, I think, in a second. Like so to be in those kinds of situations, I found, it's frustrating because it took that moment of magic. And yeah, there are some things you could look at on the other end and think, man, we really should have done more with our chances or buried one of those chances. But overall, I thought we played our game defensively. In a lot of ways, the game played out almost the way we wanted to. Now, that's a positive perspective on it. Again, the number of teams that are as good as Liverpool, the list is pretty short. And certainly who play the way Liverpool does, then we have to react to them that way, I think is a pretty short list that we'll have to worry about. But again, it's frustrating because I guess probably the most similarity I feel to it, to sort of put a bow on this thought, is similar to the away game against City last year, the one where we drew 2-2. Now, I don't feel nearly as wronged as we did in those circumstances with the red card and the goal scored in the 10th minute of 7 minutes of stoppage time or whatever it was. At the death, like that. I wasn't angrily shouting things at the TV tonight the way I was, in that game. But there was a sense to me that I still think, I think we can be better than them. I think for long stretches of this game, we were better than them. And I'm very curious to see how the reverse fixture plays out in January when we see them back in the Emirates.
Yeah.
But yes, it is very frustrating to continue to lose there. And they'll talk about the heart of a champion and all that, which I think I don't think is really reflective of what's going on. But when your team wins, you get to talk. So that's kind of where we are.
You mentioned set pieces and set piece difficulties. There's actually a couple things that I wanted to chat about with that. So the first thing is obviously with no Saka and with no Odegaard, no Waneri, like any of the guys who we've seen taking those right side corner kicks, we kind of saw our fourth place choice for the right side corner kicks, which is who is our first choice for the left side, Declan Rice, right? How do you think he did from there?
Not great. I mean, partly we're judging him against his own standard, which is pretty high. Right. I don't think we generated the same kind of danger off of those balls that we usually expect. But again, some of that too is the Liverpool defense did a good job dealing with the set pieces overall. They are, I'll be honest, we talked about them coming in as being kind of a dodgy defense. They did not look particularly good against Bournemouth. They frankly didn't look that good against Newcastle last Monday, a game that they required a 16-year-old to score a winner in the 10th minute of stoppage time to beat a 10-man Newcastle, who was also missing their striker Alexander Isak because he wants to be sold to Liverpool, which I saw just before I came on the air. Apparently is actually going to happen.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Which is disappointing. Yeah, once again, Liverpool plays an opponent without their best player. How about that? Hey, you play the schedule in front of you play the teams in front of you, but there you have it. Back to Declan Rice. Yeah, it wasn't as great from that side. I kind of understand why he's doing it. As you mentioned, some of the people who would take those kicks weren't there. Yeah, I guess you'd like to see better, but he got a couple from the left side as well, and same kind of thing. They were more dangerous, but still kind of not quite there. Right.
They're into dangerous areas that no one from Arsenal happened to be in at that time. Yeah. Did you catch the new type of set piece, or at least what appeared to me to be the new type of set piece that we were beginning to utilize in this match? So we've talked about building out from the back, and that's very much part of Arsenal style, the way that we tend to run the game. There were a few moments in this match, though, where we didn't do that, where we basically had Raya blast the ball from a goal kick into the opposition 18-yard box and basically treat it like a long-range corner kick, which I don't think we've seen them do before. It stood out to me, and if they were able to nail that, that's a pretty cool opportunity if they could make that worthwhile.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, because as we talked about, so remember, the pitch doesn't have only has a range, a regulation range in terms of its size. There's no standard size of a pitch.
Right.
It has to fit within a certain range. And part of me kind of wonders if Anfield is almost a little shorter, not quite as long, so it makes the box-to-box goal kick more of a weapon. That'll be something to keep an eye on. I don't actually know the dimensions, so I could be totally off base about that. For all I know, Anfield's enormous, and what are you talking about, you moron? That's fair. But I kind of wonder if you keep seeing that. But we've seen Raya increasingly go longer with some of his kicks too, so that might be something they've been working in. I do think also some of the greatest danger we were able to develop, especially on the right side, was Madueke, who I thought had a really good game. Really going at Kirkez, who was who's playing right back for Liverpool. I thought he had a good game, generating some chances and being a danger down that side. And so I wonder if there's a little bit of that too. Now again, he wasn't receiving Raya's kicks. He seemed to be getting a lot more from Zubimendi and some of the midfielders. But I thought that I thought was interesting. So
yeah.
I do see what you're getting at. It didn't feel like that, only because it felt like those long goal kicks kind of just wound up in Alisson's hands pretty, without too much fuss. That's what it felt like, though.
It didn't work, but I think it's interesting if they could get it to work, like with more practice, and if they were able to get like what the outfield players are doing to match more precisely where Raya is going to place the ball, that could be helpful. And ChatGPT informs me, take it with a grain of salt, I guess. Anfield is roughly 4 or 5 meters shorter than the Emirates as one reference point. So,
okay.
Yeah, for what that's worth. Injuries seemed to have a fairly big impact on this game. So from my vantage point, I'll tell you what happened to me in the beginning of this game. So this was on the USA Network here in the USA. And that means for me, as a person who streams, watching it in the NBC Sports app using a family member's cable login, and it just wouldn't play the stinking match. I'd hit watch live, and I'd get a black screen on my TV with like a little spinner in the middle, just, like it's thinking, it's trying to do something, and nothing happened. I started this like 10 minutes beforehand and thought, okay, well, maybe they don't have the pregame coverage or something. And so if I wait, it'll just pop up. But no, it got to be kickoff time and a minute past kickoff time, and it wasn't working. So then I'm in panic mode, trying to get it logged out, log back in, figure out what I needed to do to get it to work. And ultimately, I had to go to like the TV guide grid, basically, and go to the USA Network and just watch the live stream of the USA Network, which was carrying this match. And that worked for some reason. It was super frustrating. But basically, I got like a glimpse around the 5-minute mark where it came up, and I saw Saliba down on the pitch receiving medical attention, and I saw that Mascara was coming in for him. And I was like, oh, what the heck? What happened? I missed the first 5 minutes, and I see Saliba getting carried off and substituted. And then trying to get it, because then the way that I'd gotten it to work to see that little bit, the NBC Sports app thought I was in the free preview. And so it was going to stop working after like 28 and a half minutes or something. So I wasn't going to make it all the way through the half to be able to figure it out at halftime. So I had to get back out and figure it out more. And then by the time I came back, it was 13 minutes later. How did Saliba get hurt? I just completely missed that.
So that was interesting, because first off, it happened really quickly. Like it happened like in the 4th or 5th minute, really early on. And it's interesting. We apparently there was some commentary to this effect, but I mean, we of course can't hear it. I can't hear anything where I am, but we noticed right away that Saliba went down, and immediately Mosquera was up and his shirt was already on.
So they knew to be looking out for an issue or something, maybe?
That was kind of the trigger, like, wow, like he knew something's happened. And so post-game, this was Arteta post-game, said apparently Saliba rolled his ankle in pre-game. He twisted his ankle. Yes, this is Arteta's post-game comments. He twisted his ankle during the warm-up. We believed he could carry on. I could see in his first 2 actions he could not cope, and we had to get him off. Now, he goes down after a little bit of I can't even call it a collision, but, he kind of, 2 players, making a play on the ball with Ekitike, the Liverpool striker. And then he kind of went down, but it almost looked almost non-contact. And, of course, then you're freaking out because you think, oh, no, serious knee injury kind of thing. Apparently it's his ankle. We don't know. Obviously it's not good. Clearly they saw something if they had something in the pregame, and clearly, that comment says they knew very quickly that it wasn't going to work for him. So on the bright side, they had, Christian Mosquera, who's, is young. He's like 21, but has already played at, played for a season or 2 at Valencia in La Liga. He's played against, Real and Barca and all those teams. So, he, and I thought overall acquitted himself pretty well. It's interesting as we talk about this. If you think about the injured players, I thought Madueke did a pretty good job deputizing for Saka. I think Saka maybe creates and finishes a chance more, or is more likely to do so than Madueke, but that's not a shot at Madueke. That's just Saka's, good. Defensively, I thought Mosquera was okay. There were a few kind of nervy moments, but you certainly can't blame him for the goal. And you certainly can't blame, I certainly wouldn't blame him either for Liverpool's other really good chance was the goal called back for offside.
Right.
So in the sense, I thought he played pretty well overall. Given those circumstances, especially. Odegaard being out is a little different. I think we could have used him. But then we saw he came on for the last 20 minutes and, he did some things, but it just, at that point, obviously the game was in a different place. And we could talk about the substitutions in general in a little bit. But it is frustrating to have to play arguably your toughest game of the year without, essentially we played most of the game without our 3 best players. Mm-hmm. And that's without counting the fact that we also, Ben White was also out. He wasn't on the bench. So, Timber, who I thought was good, but you had Ben White wasn't there to back him up. And Christian Norgard, by the way, still hasn't appeared yet. He's still nursing something. Because about Kai Havertz is still went out. He's a guy, Havertz might have been. It's interesting to sort of look at these games and think who would be more effective, Havertz or Gyökeres, depending on the circumstances. This might have been a Kai Havertz game. I imagine if he were healthy, it would have been a Kai Havertz game. But but you don't have that. You have Gyökeres. You paid a bunch of money for. So it's not a bad thing that he's playing.
Yeah.
It's interesting to sort of say that, as frustrating as it is, and I can't help but think having them at more closer to full strength, especially given it's the 3rd game of the season. If this was a game in, say, like early April, well, they're a little knocked up, dinged up. Ooh, that's a little different. They're a little dinged up. Hello.
This is the men's senior team we're talking about.
Gonna let that one sit. No, you talk about guys being a little dinged up in April, but it's like at that time of the year, everybody's a little hurt. It happens, but it's August. It's the 3rd game of the season. Full strength is not a theoretical concept at that point, and it's very frustrating. But that's also what makes this game so weird, right? Like, this is a massive game in the course of our season, except that we have 35 more league games to play.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know quite what to think about the injuries in that sense. They're frustrating, but also having watched the game, I don't think maybe they allow us to be a little more direct offensively, especially if we get 90 minutes of Odegaard. That might have been the thing that would have been different. But maybe Saka does a little better than Madueke. Saliba's a little more assured. Maybe he finds and turns in one of those corners. But now we start getting a little too speculative for my taste if we're thinking about that. So
well, yeah. So you made reference to the substitutions earlier. I know you have thoughts on this specifically. Like, what did you think about them bringing in Max Dowman from Madueke at the very end?
Yeah, that was interesting. Mostly because Ethan Nwaneri is on the bench. That was where I was a little. the benefit to Dowman potentially is that he's young and a little fearless. And, we saw the game he played against Leeds, and we also, I'd seen some bits and pieces from preseason. He actually had won a penalty in his last 3 appearances. So at that stage of the game, you saw he tried to drive to the box a couple of times. And, to their credit, Liverpool's defenders are a little better than some of what he saw otherwise. They did a good job with him. It looked like they did a good job swarming him, too. You saw he was kind of triple teamed at a couple of points. But that's the thing.
Yeah.
At his age and the skill level of what he's facing, like there are certain players, like you could triple team Saka and he could find a way out of it because, he's a star. You could do it with Odegaard and he'd find a way out, make a pass or find his way out of it. Dowman's, he may have been triple teamed, at the youth level, but not with the guys not with these guys. Right. These are, much better than anything he's seen before. So,
yeah, they stripped him of the ball pretty easily 2 or 3 times where, he was just powerless to stop him.
Yeah, I guess I could sort of see. So, I mean, obviously we flashed a little earlier, Eze coming on, Odegaard coming on. I imagine Odegaard was on a timer, like he wouldn't have come on before, he came on when he came on because that's as much as they expected to get out of him. Mm-hmm. And at that point, especially with having you already used the early sub window on for Saliba Mosquera, you kind of have to stick Eze with him because I imagine there was a desire to get Eze on the field, and he comes on before when the game's still 0-0. I think some ways strategically Arteta's playing for 60, 70 minutes of 0-0, and then you're able to put Odegaard and Eze on the field. And, use them as a way to push into a tired defense and kind of be the difference makers late and walk out of there 1-0. I think I kind of feel like that might have been the overall plan. Mm-hmm. Didn't work, obviously. But I do think that I wonder if that was in their minds there. But I understand the sub. You might have wanted it a little earlier, but I wonder if Odegaard's condition in particular made that less likely. But yeah, the Dowman one's interesting for me. I could almost see it in the sense of his directness as a player, but almost kind of like what was the point of Ethan Nwaneri, Right. Unless they see him as redundant to Odegaard, even though they've used him on the right side in sort of Saka's position. They used him a little bit there last year. Mm-hmm. It was interesting to see. I don't know what I think about it. I don't really know quite how to necessarily interpret all of that. I mean, look at the bench. I mean, we also had Leandro Trossard was still on there as well. Yeah. He would have been an interesting one, I think, to come on. But he would have come on the left for Martinelli, and we'd already pulled him for Eze. So, yeah. Kind of curious to see where we are in 2 weeks when we come back from the international break and they line up against Forest. You'll think Eze's worked in better. Some of the newer guys are all worked in better. We'll have a good sense of the health of everyone, of some of the injured players. And so we're kind of curious to see how they play these things out going forward.
Right. One thing I remembered I wanted to actually talk to you about a little bit is the broadcasters used a term in describing Zubimendi, which I wouldn't have necessarily come up with on my own, but it kind of encapsulates how I've been feeling about him a little bit over these few matches that we've seen him so far. The one, I forget if Lee Dixon or the other guy asked this question, but they said, does he seem a little foul-y to you? Like, he seems like a bit of a foul-y player. And it does seem like he's causing more fouls, and I think he's gotten at least 1 or 2 yellow cards so far this season. It seems like he's maybe doing that a little bit more than other midfielders we've had.
I mean, he's a defensive midfielder, so his job is always going to be to make those tackles, and he's more likely in a position to pick up those fouls. I actually thought he was really good today. Yeah. Although, of course, he did pick up a yellow card. He was the yellow card on, I forget who it was actually fouled, but the yellow card that led to the free kick goal, right? Which I thought was a harsh yellow, to be honest. It was a foul, and so it doesn't change the outcome of the play at all. I thought the yellow was a little harsh there. We don't talk too much about the refereeing. I thought he generally let them play. There are a few instances I might want back here or there, but overall, he definitely was allowed a lot of physical play, and I don't think that really benefited one side or the other. So, fair play to that. And they nailed that offside on the disallowed Liverpool goal. They had that called right away.
Right. On the field.
Right.
Yeah.
They had that called on the field right away. And the replay, we looked at, we're like, where I hope so, but like where? I didn't see it. And then they show the replay and go, oh yeah, he's
when they pause it at the time the pass is taken, it's like, oh wow, it's not even close.
And that's especially because he ends up being the first player to touch the rebound. So then it's definitely like there's no interpretation on this one.
Definitely.
Clearly offside.
I guess if we are momentarily talking about the officiation, I guess the one thing that I was kind of puzzled by was there was seemingly like basically no stoppage time in the first half. There was like a less than 1 minute. The whistle was blown more or less right away. It's a little frustrating given that was the half that we were playing better. And with Saliba's injury, you think that there could have been at least a full minute of stoppage time given, but I didn't see how long maybe it was because they knew about his injury. Maybe it was actually quicker than I was imagining it was.
Yeah. I mean, really, we could go back to the obvious point, which is that, we're fully back in the age of stoppage time. I don't know. Seems like, I guess, but also, he comes off, they do take him off pretty quickly. Like they don't have to worry about warming up Mosquera. He's pretty much ready to go.
Right.
Clearly they knew Saliba was going to have an issue, so he doesn't. They just take him right off. They don't even. There's no like discussion from the Arsenal side about this,
right?
Which I think may have sped that up a bit. And really, other than that, there wasn't really a lot else that happened. I mean, there were things that happened, but certainly nothing that would have led to a lot of stoppage time necessarily. Again, especially it feels more pronounced to this so far this season. But that would generally what you see a little bit of stoppage time in the first half. And then you'd see all the stoppage time added in the second half, almost. So it's almost felt like it balanced out the course of the game.
Right. That when they announced 7 minutes in the second half, it's like, I guess they're making up for there being none in the first half. But given that we were more on fire in the first half, that kind of gave Liverpool a little bit of an edge in that one way, but a little.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, frankly, at that point, we were chasing the game anyway. So we wanted the extra. We wanted the time.
That's true. But my point is maybe it wouldn't have been necessary. Maybe we would have found that goal in that like 1 or 2 minutes in the first half with the way the team was playing. But you never know.
Yeah, if the internet, social media had existed back in back in like the 80s, I don't know if you would have heard about Kenny Time and Kenny Dalglish. So the famous one is Fergie Time when Ferguson's United teams. How much extra time was available for at Old Trafford? Well, however much United needed to score the tying or winning goal, that's what it felt like sometimes. Again, who knows? We had social media in the 80s. Maybe we would have heard more of those complaints with all those Liverpool teams that won all the time. But I've never heard quite the same thing and sort of the same kind of quote unquote conspiracy theory that we attached to United and Old Trafford.
Right.
But. It is interesting, but to me, I guess I've sort of seen the full cycle through it where they tried the World Cup stoppage time and everyone complained because it was a lot of stoppage time. It's like, well, you watch the game. Yeah. And we've kind of just reverted back to the way it used to be, which is how much stoppage time is there? Well, it's probably about, I don't know, it seems right. Yeah.
All right. Who is your player of the week this week?
It's a tough one because I actually thought a lot of guys played pretty well overall. I'm gonna say, I don't really know. I'm gonna give it today to Ricardo Calafiori.
Okay, good.
Because I thought he was one of our more dangerous offensive players in terms of driving forward, but also he had the big job today of tracking back and dealing with Mo Salah. And I thought overall did a pretty good job. Now, was he heavily supported in that? Absolutely. Martinelli played a big role in that. Mosquera and Gabriel shifting over to Gabriel in particular shifting over to help him. So it's hardly like he was on an island. And he saw, especially in the second half, there were a couple times Salah gets the ball in deep and he's double teamed, which is again what you should do in those cases. But I thought overall Calafiori was probably the most interesting one. I mean, I could say a lot about Madueke, who I thought had a really good game, was really dangerous for much of it. I thought Zubimendi had probably his best game at Arsenal, but it's hard to get, again, he gives up the foul for the goal, which is frustrating. Declan Rice did a lot of good things, but also, we talked about the corner kicks, not where we wanted to be.
We had like 9 of them, and I think Odegaard only took 1 of those or something. Yeah.
I mean, you could either throw it. You could even throw in Mosquera, who frankly acquitted himself quite well given the circumstances under which he played this game. So I can think of a few players I definitely don't have on that list, but let's try and keep it positive at the end.
I reacted saying, "Oh, good," when you said Calafiore for a couple reasons. For one thing, he was my second choice, but also he was someone who my dad had specifically pointed out. I was on a call, like kind of watching live with him today, going through the same connection issues along with him. He was having the same issues, but so yeah, he called out Calafiore as someone who. I think him, and it's so funny sometimes. Like it's like he's been watching a lot of the matches as long as I have, but not like every match and not paying attention in as much detail. And he thought that he might have been a new transfer, not realizing that he actually came along last year.
He was hurt for a good chunk of last season.
He was hurt for a lot of last year, right? Which does definitely color that. But yeah, so Calafiore had a great game, good pick there. I am going to pick Madueke. He was asked to play in Saka's position. I don't think he played it the same way that Saka does, but he reminded me kind of more of Martinelli, just kind of his pace a couple times, chasing down the ball, almost making things happen. Some good, if I'm remembering right, like one or two good crosses that didn't quite connect, but the idea was good. And I'm starting to get a sense of him as a player, and I'm liking what I'm seeing so far.
Yeah, he's been pretty good. His transfer, we talked about this a little bit in the in the season preview, was seen as controversial amongst Arsenal fans for a lot of reasons. But I think so far he's been pretty good. Now, a lot of players can look really good for 2 or 3 games, and all of a sudden you get a month's worth of them, and you start to have other thoughts. But overall, yeah, I thought he's been good. He was really good, really dangerous today. I thought he generally did very well. I think in the outside, I think we found some opportunities. He had one play where the through ball came, and he came wide around Kirkaz. I mean, he burned Kirkaz taking a much wider angle on the ball. I mean, he has some speed to burn.
Yeah,
and made a nuisance of himself on that side.
Yeah, definitely. All that out of the way, I know what everybody's been waiting to hear, which will be old news by the time they listen to this tomorrow, September 1st, when we actually post it. But Miami has lost the League's Cup to Seattle. So as we started recording, the first half had ended 1-0 in Seattle's favor. And then as we recorded, I had a small picture-in-picture window where I could kind of glance at what was going on. And they managed to convert a penalty for a second goal. It was a nice kick, hard and straight into the bottom corner. And then they also got another goal from open play that was a 1v1 situation against the keeper, and they sunk it. So they had a resounding victory against Messi in Miami. So that's disappointing that Miami made it that far and then didn't get it. But it's not a team that I care a lot about. So I was kind of almost like, you may, if anyone watches this video a second time, and you might see me kind of grinning a couple times. It's like, okay, I guess that's how this is going, because I was silently reacting as it transpired.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle is one of those teams that's always deep in tournaments, always in position to win things. They're just a really well-run organization, great fan base. They have an NFL stadium, and that lower bowl was packed for Sounder. They love the Sounders, and the Sounders, the results speak for themselves. The Sounders love them back. It's not an accident that Seattle is going to host the U.S. national team in one of the World Cup games this summer.
Oh, sure. All right, what is up for next week?
Right. Speaking of World Cup, next week is international break. Certainly from an Arsenal perspective, we hope that everyone who goes off to their national teams, cross their fingers, everybody comes out of it in good shape. A lot of World Cup qualifiers, a couple friendlies. We didn't talk on this show because we had so much summer Arsenal news to talk about. We didn't talk about any of the summer stuff. So World Cup qualifiers of the summer, we'll update you on all of the teams, the countries we're following through qualification. We'll probably talk a little Gold Cup. So a lot of stuff to throw in there. Maybe some World Cup, little World Cup teasers as well, or World Cup information as we have it. But that'll be for the international break. For Arsenal's perspective, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks to stew this one over. And then Saturday, the 13th of September, they'll be home against Nottingham Forest. And as of right now, that game is scheduled to be on the USA Network. So hopefully we can take out our frustrations of this game on Nottingham Forest, who may be on the verge of firing Nuno Espirito Santo.
You mentioned it's going to be on USA Network, and I'm thinking hopefully I'll just be able to actually watch the entire game from the beginning.
We got 2 weeks to figure it out. So
yeah, exactly. Thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to the podcast version of our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with the link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to reach out with a comment or reply to one of our videos. Ask a question, argue with us, compliment us, whatever you'd like. We'd love to hear from you. We record the show using Zencaster. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our socials. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
We still love you, Arsenal. We do.